Welcome back to the Play by Play Podcast YouTube channel. And oh man, Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. When I first started this podcast like 5 years ago, first of all, I never thought that I would be talking about boxing. But second of all, I never thought that I would say the words Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. You have to think that 5 years ago in 2020, Jake Paul had just fought Anisan Gibb, who was a YouTuber. And now he's fighting a two-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. By the way, with his hardest fight being against Nate Diaz, Anderson Silva, Tommy Fury, who's like a boxing prospect. Like it's nuts to even say, bro. It's like crazy to even talk about. And you're probably going to hear a lot of the same things from other analysts because realistically, what else is there to say? Like it is Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua. What do we really expect to happen here? And really the reasons why I'm making this video is because I've been thinking to myself, is there a way that Jake Paul wins this? And I say wins this because Jake Paul's not winning. Let's be freaking clear about this. If Jake Paul wins, I don't even know what he needs to do if he wins. Like the man's already rich. He doesn't have to go out and get a lottery ticket or whatever. If Jake Paul wins this fight, the world would honestly be destroyed. And that might be over exaggeration, but that is how mental it would be if Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua. He's not winning. And even Jake Paul, as crazy as he is, and as much as he has been doing a phenomenal job building up this fight and acting nonchalant and acting like it's just going to be another day at the office, he has to know that he is not going to win this fight. But is there a way for him to get a moral victory out of this? Is there a way that he can have some kind of success? Is there a way that he could even land on AJ and in some regard get his respect? Possibly. I think it all depends on how AJ really attacks this, which from all outlets and what I've seen with the face-off and even at the press conference and whatnot, AJ's meaning business. He's coming in here to clean up Jake Paul, to keep it clean here, and he's coming to do some really serious damage. And that to me, not to go off track a little bit, but that to me is the most concerning part of this, because boxing is a sport that for years now, for the past couple of years, has been digging and clawing to try and gain their respect back from the mainstream media. It has been a sport that has been shrouded in controversy, shrouded in disappointment because it's a sport that is owned by multiple organizations, multiple associations. It is a sport that is ruled by multiple different promotions and promoters. And because of that, before Riyadh season in Turkey Al Sheikh, we have really, really struggled to bring some of the best fighters together in the ring. It took us 8 years to get Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather in the ring together. It is 2025. And yet we have not seen Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. It took Saudi Arabia's money to get fights like Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk, to get Terrence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, who, by the way, Terrence Crawford retiring yesterday, that was absolutely crazy. And that, even creates more for boxing to need to go out and make new stars, because that is the pound for pound king. And this is a fight that could end all of that progress for boxing. If Jake Paul, and I'm not saying this as an over exaggeration, Jake Paul could get seriously hurt in this fight. Dare I say, something even worse could happen. And I'm not wishing that upon him. And I'm praying to God that he is going to be okay. But if something terrible happens in this fight, which there is every chance that it could, just as it could in any other fight. But in this particularly, because of the skill gap, because of the mere size advantage, this is a stain that boxing might not be able to wash away, because there will be people with their pitchforks and just lighting fires saying, why would you ever expect this to go well? Why would anybody ever sanction a fight like this where you have 6 inches in height difference, where you have probably 60 pounds in weight difference, where you have an Olympic gold medalist, former 2-time undisputed champion, going up against a guy who hasn't even fought a intercontinental champion at the boxing level? Why would you do that? And again, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping that we get a clean slate here, but that is the boundary that we are in right now. Now, going back to Jake Paul and how he could potentially get some kind of moral victory, the thing I'm most concerned with is that Jake Paul is not prepared for this fight. Because 2 months ago, he planned to be ready for Gervonta Tank Davis, who is a 5'4", 135-pounder. Obviously, the whole thing happened with Tank, and within a couple of weeks, and barely even a month ago, he announced that he's going to Anthony Joshua, which is a complete 180. And to me, that's just not enough time to train for AJ. As good of sparring as he possibly had for Tank Davis as well, because obviously Tank Davis, former world champion at this point, current world champion, I still think, with the WBA. To go from small 100, like Manny Pacquiao type of guys, to then going and sparring against Lawrence Okolie and Frank Sanchez and Jared Anderson and whoever else he brought into the gym for 4 weeks, like that is just, it's not enough time. If Jake seriously wanted to do this and seriously wanted even a chance to survive even a couple of rounds, to my opinion, he should have had, 4 to 6 months to train for this fight. And that's what is really concerning, especially because we've seen what guys like Okolie and Sanchez and Anderson have been able to do to him in sparring. We saw the black eye on him on stream with Aiden Ross and Neon. We saw all of that. And those are against guys, by the way, and Lawrence Okolie and Frank Sanchez, who, yes, are top contenders within the heavyweight division to go out for titles, but are nowhere near the level of an AJ, have not nearly reached the heights that AJ has reached himself, that don't have the power that AJ can even generate with just his jab alone, not to mention the boxing IQ that he has and the athleticism and the more athleticism that he's going to have, now being limited down to 245 pounds. And then outside of that, I asked myself, has Jake even been in a realistic boxing setting? It's a legitimate question to ask, because he's only faced one real boxer in Tommy Fury. Has he been in a boxing setting within the ring where they are consistently circling each other and fighting for the outside foot with their footwork and looking to put their mark on with the jab? Has he consistently been in a place where he's fighting on both the front and the back foot, where he has been consistently exchanging fire with other punchers? Has he shown the ability to really take a strike from somebody the size of Anthony Joshua? If you don't remember, go back to that Tyron Woodley first fight with Jake, where he got hurt with a huge overhand right from Tyron that knocked him into the ropes. And that's Tyron Woodley, a guy that competes at the 170-pound division, who's 5'9", 5'10", maybe even barely even 6 inches tall, is Tyron Woodley at 40 years old. And now you're going up against AJ, 6'6", 245 pounds he is going to be for this fight, who has faced off against Daniel Dubois and hurt Daniel Dubois, and has, knocked out guys like hard-nosed guys like Dillian White and whatnot. Like, it's just, it's concerning. And I don't know, I'm really trying to dig and claw for anything for Jake here, but it's super tough. But Jake Paul is crazy, and I guarantee that there will at least be one moment in this fight, probably in the opening seconds, that he is going to try and go for something. The only way that Jake Paul could have modest success against AJ, in my opinion, and of course there's going to be different strategies for everybody, is if he bucks up, covers up, puts his head onto AJ's chest, and just starts going at the body. I think that is the only realistic way that Jake Paul could really get some real shots off on AJ. Because he's not going to touch AJ's face. He's not going to touch his head. I guarantee that he doesn't get anywhere close. With the reach advantage that AJ has to be able to keep him away, with the power that he has within that jab, it's going to be very difficult for Jake to get something off to the head. But if he can squirm in there and use his size and use some kind of quicker footwork or whatnot, and get inside to AJ and get him in the position where he's on the ropes or whatnot, and he's able to throw some quick hooks to the body, that might actually be beneficial for Jake, just because also on AJ's side, with his longer arms, he's going to have a much more difficult time at hitting Jake when he's right here and having to go like this. He's not going to be able to generate the type of power that he would when he's fully extending his jab or fully extending his straight right hand. As for AJ and what his tactics might possibly be, I think Jake is going to make this out of the first round. And I say that not because I think that Jake is going to survive and he's going to show that he is as the same skill level as AJ. But if you watch the Francis Ngannou fight with Anthony Joshua, and if you've watched AJ throughout his whole career, he is a boxing surgeon. He really does his best to methodically break you down, whether you're a world champion in boxing, whether you're a world champion MMA fighter, whether you're Jake Paul. He really tries his best to relax himself, calm himself down. He sticks out that jab in the first round. He really does his best to cover up, to try to gauge, where his opponent's power level is at and where he wants to be. Unless a golden opportunity happens for AJ where he knocks Jake into the ropes and he's able to just whack him with a big time overhand right or hook around Jake's guard, I don't see AJ really going for anything within that first round. Sure, he'll hit Jake with some solid shots and I'll show him what he's gone in with and gain Jake's respect immediately, even though I think that Jake already has respect for him. But I think the second round is where you see this happen. And I see AJ with a very high guard, especially being in Alexander Usyk's place, showing a little bit more of his movement to be able to move side to side and be able to move, both laterally and, forward and backwards. And then in that second round, he'll probably double jab Jake, get him into some spot where he's against the ropes or he's in the corner or whatnot, and then he's just going to unload. And Jake, unfortunately, he's just going to have to cover up. He can't try to counter. If he does try to counter, he's going to get whacked with a big-time shot. Even just the jab is going to be super, super dangerous for Jake Paul, and I see this being a second-round finish. The only thing that I'm wondering about this, and I think that this is a legitimate question, is are they going to let Jake get knocked out? And I don't say that as in Jake's fights are scripted. I don't think that any of Jake's fights have been scripted, and I don't think that this one will be either. But there's obviously a lot of concern and eyes on this fight, and there's a lot of people that are obviously super concerned at the levels, the gap that AJ has and the levels that AJ has on Jake. And I'm wondering if Jake's team and even just the whole promotion itself and Netflix, especially Netflix, because they're taking a massive gamble with this. Don't get me wrong. They're going to get massive eyes. But if this were to happen and there might be some controversy or a scandal here where Jake gets seriously hurt, they could be, they could possibly get in trouble for this as well. And so I'm wondering if there's going to be a conversation with the ref, if there's going to be a conversation with Jake's team to where they say, okay, the talent level is super huge. We want this to be entertaining. We want this to go, a round or two. AJ, comes in, he does his work in the first round. And then in the second round, the ref just, he's right there. He's literally next to AJ, just waiting for himself to step in. Or you have Jake's team just clutching that towel to be able to throw it in immediately as soon as Jake gets into any kind of, big-time danger there, and we could see a stop to that fight. Now, obviously, for Jake, that would be best-case scenario because he would keep his damn head. And, whether you're a fan of the sport or not, I don't think that you should really be sad if that ending ends up happening because we're trying to save a life here at this point is what we're talking about with Jake Paul. But I'm wondering if that potential could happen. As for these two, we on this podcast we always talk about what could happen going forward. For Jake Paul, win or lose, well, lose. Again, I don't think that there's a scenario where he wins. If he loses and he's able to keep himself intact, I think that there's still potentially a path for him to maybe become a world champion or become a top contender. We talk about the cruiserweight division all the time. That to me is more in line with Jake's natural weight. There is still a 40-plus-year-old champion in Badou Jack who's supposed to have a championship fight coming up soon in this rematch. That could be a play for Jake as well. Jake at this point is still top 15 within the cruiserweight rankings. That is something that he could definitely go for. If not, I would like to see him go up against a big-time prospect. I'd like to see the rematch with Tommy Fury. I think that that's the fight to make for Jake Paul. I'd like to see, maybe a Vidal Riley, who just signed along with Misfits Pro Boxing. That could be a potentially massive event. And while Jake wouldn't win that fight, I think that he could potentially surprise everyone with showing them their skill. And then for AJ, when he wins this fight, and again, when he wins this fight, he's slated right now to go up against Tyson Fury later next year. That is what Riyadh Season has potentially agreed on. Now, of course, there are going to be tune-up fights before that, and knowing how Tyson Fury's attitude normally begins to swing, there's a possibility that that couldn't happen anymore. But assuming that he does face Fury later next year, I would like to see not something where it's a 50-50 fight for AJ's tune-up fight, but I would like to see a convincing type of contender. Andy Ruiz Jr. is interesting to me. I know he's been dealing with injury. I think he broke his hand in the Jarrell Miller fight. Jarrell Miller as well, that could be potentially a tune-up fight for AJ. That would attract a lot of eyes, as we know those two absolutely hate each other. But those are two fights that I think that AJ could respectfully win, that he'd be the big-time odds-on favorite in that, despite Andrew Ruiz being 1-1. But with his past performances against Miller and guys like Chris Arreola and Luis Ortiz and whatnot, with his big-time layoffs, I think that AJ would be highly favored in those fights, and those would be big-time names. Outside of that, Martin Bakole, I know they've talked about that a lot, potentially making that in Africa. That could be really interesting. Jared Anderson, the future of American boxing. Like, what I'm trying to say is, for Fury and AJ, I want their tune-up fights to be fights that they're obviously going to be pretty favorable to win, but that attract big names. I don't want the 200th ranked United States heavyweight to come in against AJ, and so AJ can just finish him in one round. I don't want a Robert Helenius or nothing like that to go ahead and take a fall and go out and AJ beats him in the first round and boom, there's the tune-up fight. I want a legitimate heavyweight that we know of, that us as the media know of, that AJ and Fury can obviously beat, but will still be a entertaining name to go up against. So a Ruiz, a Jarrell Miller, Jared Anderson, something like that. I think that all of those could be interesting tune-ups for AJ going forward. And then we get the fight with Fury at the end of 2026 to finally crown the King of Britain, the King of England, however you want to say it. But that's all from me today. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. How bad do you think that this could end for Jake Paul? Do you think that there is a world where he actually either wins it or gets a moral victory out of it? And how so do you think that will happen? Answer all of those down below in the comment section, as well as subscribing to the channel. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those apps are going to be down below. We're on all of those social medias. You'll get to see my latest reaction to breaking news from the NBA, the NFL, and combat sports. And you will never miss for whenever the podcast decides to upload an episode. And without further ado, guys, that's all that I have for you guys today. I will see you guys on the next one. Have a great rest of your weekend, and peace.